Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and thinkers. This is LLP's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Thursday, May 25th, 2017. Yep, it is raining in the heart of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I am transmitting at CJ's Java Lounge, located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue along the New River of Fort Lauderdale. You can say it's around the southwest section of the Andrews Avenue Bridge. And, not far from the jail, the courthouse, and all that. So, and of course, Bouvier Park or Huizenga Plaza. Yeah, it's a little historical area. Downtown salooners have been around during the Prohibition era. So it's like, they got a lot of historical landmarks. Yeah, so I'm just kicking back a little bit. Got off of work. Good day. But raining, so it's not as dismal. But everyone's like, oh, I can't play because there's no sunshine. Well, you bring your umbrella and have a good time, okay, folks? Well, people still rambling about the whole Manchester thing. Looks like some of the reports are coming out. He's a Patsy, possible agent, and so forth. We don't know for sure. And there was claims about intelligence. U.S. intelligence has gave Britain a heads up, and now Britain's denying it, and Trump's making the claim he will prosecute those that are leaking information. I'm like, oh my goodness, is this the world of censorship? And there's even reports that martial troops would be going on the streets of Britain. Martial Law 101? Oh my goodness. Folks here need to get a cup of tea and shove their big Doc Marten boots, the British brand, right up Theresa May's rear end. She sounded like a puppet, just like Tony Blair and the other yahoos over there. Good grief. When are you folks are going to start learning? I know people in Britain out there are a lot of critical thinkers, so I'm not going to crucify the whole country. This is just another way of locking down a society, be enslaved, an Orwellian project to be fulfilled. One world order, New World Order 101, I call it. So, without further ado, I just been browsing around certain sites and so forth. Just decide what the hell I'm going to be talking about. That's just me. I just do an improv. And speaking of that, we'll just do a little bit more of the Manchester bombing here. And it's from newsbuds.com. It's a Newsbud exclusive. It's called Manchester Bombing, How British Intelligence Has Coddled Terrorists. It's written by Kurt Nemo. If you remember him, he used to be with InfoWars. So I have to say, his articles and videos are really good, so you should always check it out. Some of his archives on YouTube. And I know they've been, Newsbud has been having a sluggish campaign right now on trying to get the stuff out. So if you be a member, that'd be great. And then you have a Kickstarter support, so you can donate money to a media that's people funded. That's it. So it's them and have integrity and principles. If they're one of them, I always commend. So let's just read on here. It says, Salman Abedi, the alleged perpetrator of the deadly bombing at Ariana Grande concert in Manchester, was on the radar of British Secret Services, according to Interior Minister Amber Rudd. We do know that he was known up to a point to the intelligence services, she told Sky News. This mission follows a pattern. Abel Hamed al-Assad, the supposed mastermind of the Paris attacks in 2015, was on the radar of intelligence services in France and Belgium. And Khaled Massoud, the terrorist blamed for the Westminster attack earlier this year, was also on record with security services in Britain. In fact, there are numerous cases going back decades where this was the case. Dame Eliza Manningham-Buller, the former Director General of MI5, said in 2006, MI5 and police were tackling 200 groups or networks totaling more than 1,600 identified individuals in the UK who were actively engaged in plotting or facilitating terrorist acts. More recently, the current head of MI5, Andrew Parker, said his agency and British police are monitoring more than 3,000 suspected jihadis. British intelligence, however, is far more familiar with suspected terrorists than either Manningham, Buller, or Parker are willing to admit. Imam Abu Qatada, the alleged spiritual leader of the al-Qaeda terrorist network, Osama bin Laden's right-hand man in Europe, and believed by several European countries to be a pivotal figure in international terrorism, was installed in the safe house by British intelligence. It's interesting here, huh? In 1996 and 1997, Qatada met with British MI5 agents and agreed to become an informant for the British intelligence. Qatada was such a valuable asset the British turned down a request to extradite him to Jordan, where he was suspected of participating in a series of car bombings. He was subsequently granted asylum. It's like, you hope folks are really paying attention to this, man. Good grief. Britain had given shelter to one of the fiercest advocates of the global jihad. Abu Qatada lived and breathed the al-Qaeda ideology, issued religious decrees, allowing Algerian terrorists to commit mass murder in the name of God, and raised hundreds of thousands of pounds for Islamists to carry on the war against Russia and Chechnya, write Sean O'Neill and Daniel McGorry in their 2006 book, Suicide Factory. Bashir al-Aradi, a longtime friend of Qatada, was also an informant for MI5 and worked as an intermediary between the British intelligence agency and the high-profile Imam. All I did in Britain was to try to help with steps necessary to get a meeting between Abu Qatada and MI5. I was trying to bring them together. MI5 will give me messages to take to Abu Qatada, and Abu Qatada would give me messages to take back to them. Al-Rahi's associate with MI5 was later admitted in court papers. Qatada would later claim that shortly after 9/11, MI5 offered him a passport and an Iranian visa, an opportunity to escape to Afghanistan. He said he turned down the offer because he did not trust the intelligence agency not to hand him over to the Jordanians, the Egyptians, or the Saudis. Imam Omar Bakri Muhammad, who helped found the Islamist group called Hezb Tahrir, and later al-Mujahiroon, was also an important asset of British intelligence. The British government knows who we are. MI5 has interrogated us many times. I know we have something called a public immunity, he said in 2001. Muhammad enjoyed immunity despite calling for the assassination of British Prime Minister John Major. Freedom and democracy brings nothing but chaos. I'm here to bring the message to Britain and to one day fly the black flag of Islam over Downing Street, he declared in 2000. And there's links on here too. You can really check this out yourself. He admitted supporting jihad verbally, financially, and even militarily, and added that we have had a lot of volunteers from England wanting to attend camps for military training. We sent them to South Africa, Afghanistan, Nigeria, and Kashmir. Muhammad made these statements while under the watchful eye of British intelligence. Abu Hamaz al-Mazri, a leading radical imam who ran the Finsbury Park Mosque, also worked for British intelligence in 1997. He told a rally of jihadists in London that he should attack aircraft over London and provided a plan for doing so. The meeting was also attended by Omar Bakri Muhammad. British authorities took no action. The authorities also took no action when al-Mazri was implicated in a beating of elderly Muslims at the Finsbury Park Mosque. In June 2001, the Italian Secret Service Sade, was SISDE, said al-Masri had proposed a plot to attack planes apparently in connection with the G8 summit in Genoa, Italy. The same year, an al-Masri associate at the Finsbury Park Mosque, Dajmal Maghal, was implicated in a plot to attack the U.S. Embassy in Paris. Despite Baghal's clear link to operations in London and Leicester, however, there was no search of the mosque building and no attempt to arrest the chief recruiter, Abu Hamaz al-Masri, who led the prayers there. The mosque continued to be at the center of jihad recruitment. Wright O'Neill and McGorry. Mohammed Sadiq Khan, said to be the lead suicide bomber of the 7/7 attack in London that killed 56 people, attended the Finsbury Park Mosque. Khan and fellow suicide bomber Shihzad Tanrir first heard Abu Hamaz preach in Leeds, and when Khan arrived at the mosque, he carried a letter of recommendation from Harun Rashid Aswad, a top and high-profile aide to al-Masri. Assad is considered the mastermind of the 7/7 attack. He is also a British intelligence asset, according to John Lustis, a former government prosecutor and former Army intelligence officer. What's really embarrassing is that the entire British police are out chasing Aswad, and one wing of the British government, MI6, or the British Secret Service, has been hiding him, and then has been a real source of contention between the CIA, the Justice Department, and Britain. He's a double agent, Loftus told Fox News on July 29, 2005. Loftus maintains the Justice Department's order Seattle prosecutors not to touch Aswad because apparently Aswad was working for British intelligence. Now Aswad's boss, the one-armed London Imam Abu Hamaz al-Masri, he gets indicted 2 years later. Harun Rashid Aswad was arrested in Zambia in July 2005 and extradited back to Britain. After he arrived, he was not questioned about his role in the 7/7 attack, and the authorities said they would not prosecute him for any crime. Instead, they planned to extradite him to the United States, where there was a warrant for his arrest in connection with efforts to help start a militant training camp in Oregon in 1999. The record is clear. British intelligence allowed dangerous terrorists to roam freely in the country, protects them, and refuses to prosecute them for plotting and engaging in acts of terror. The establishment media portrayed this as intelligence failures. But there is another, more rational explanation. Like the CIA, British intelligence is using Islamist terrorists as part of an Operation Gladio-type covert operation to realize a political agenda, a never-ending war on terror that enriches the military-industrial complex and extends the surveillance state and expands a repressive police state. What we're seeing now is a disgraceful attempt by the government and security services to exploit the valid fears of the British public in order to justify the surveillance of innocent citizens on an extraordinary scale, Green Party leader Natalie Bennett said in 2015. British Prime Minister Theresa May raised the terror threat level to critical following the Manchester attack and have posted the army outside Buckingham Palace, Westminster, and Downing Street. Today, we have 984 members of the military coming forward as requested by the police, said Home Secretary Amber Rudd. The soldiers will be deployed as part of Operation Temperer. May said troops will be visible at large events, including concerts and football matches. It is the first time Operation Temperer, organized after the Charles Hebdo terror attack in Paris in January 2015, has been mobilized. Operation Temperer provides for up to 1,500 soldiers to be deployed to augment armed police officers engaging in protective security duties at key sites in major UK cities. It is unlikely police and soldiers armed with automatic rifles can indeed prevent a terrorist attack. The move, however, does let the British police know They now live in a police state and may soon be under an emergency decree like the people of France. Unbelievable, I have to say. And there's a Wikipedia thing on Operation Temperer. You can look it up. There's all links on here on this page. So I'm not really going nuts here. You talk about New World Order 101 and all that. More merit to the barrel. Some folks have to start realizing, even in Britain, you gotta resist this debacle. Soon it will be the villages, the farmlands, the small towns, rural areas, etc. And what's next? Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales. It is worse than Brexit. Now, I'm not a big fan or the European Union. It's like, hey, we could do tyranny in our own way. This is what you want, Great Britain. This is what the world wants. This is what the United States wants. Or Canada. You folks better start waking up. This is totally insane, and I could say treasonous within the British intelligence, the government of Great Britain. Plain and simple. I don't give a damn if you support this or not. Something to really look at, my friends. That's one thing I gotta say. Totally unbelievable. But gonna do a little sharing here. I'm gonna put this all my footnotes on my speaker page and all that, so definitely check it out. It sounds nuts, but it is. What more in Britain gonna tolerate this? More privileges instead of rights. Numbers instead of being sovereign. Of course, they're going to use that whole thing as what happened when you support Brexit. They're going to give you that guilt trip there as well. And even talks about, British intelligence coddling these individuals and letting them go and all that. And get them and if they get indicted, it'll be lesser crimes. You gotta watch. That's why you always gotta watch government, my friends. You never trust them. You don't bend over for them or kiss the floor they walk on, because many of them in there are criminal elements. Other words, pieces of garbage. You got a lot of puppets in the jihadist movement as well. This is just a prime example. Double agents and so forth. You pray for Britain and the world, my friends, and defy all forms of tyranny. We're going to continue on here. This came from Salman. Came out like a few hours ago. Duran. 4 hours ago. And it's written by Adam Gary. It says here how the British deep state turned Manchester into al-Qaeda town UK. And as it reads here, more and more information is emerging on how the savage terrorist atrocity recently committed in Manchester was a classic case of terrorist blowback, a phenomenon describing how when Western governments fund, arm, and aid terrorists, they often come back to commit horrific crimes against the citizens of the country which funded and aided them. It has been confirmed that the father of the Manchester ISIS bomber was a member of al-Qaeda-affiliated Libyan Islamic fighting group. The Libyan Islamic fighting group was initially comprised of battle-hardened fighters who traveled to Afghanistan in the 1980s to fight the Soviet Union and the secular government in Kabul. According to the MI5 agent and whistleblower David Schuyler, the UK has been funding, arming, and training the Libyan Islamic fighting group as early as the 1990s and even helped the group organize an attempted assassination of Libyan revolutionary leader Muammar Gaddafi in 1996. When Britain went to war on Libya in 2011, these efforts intensified. The Libyan Islamic Fighting Group became a crucial component of the West War in Libya. The West War, of course, of the brainchild of Hillary Clinton and then U.S. Secretary of State. Britain and France became most vocal participants in the war. Many jihadists from the Libyan Islamic fighting group located to Manchester, specifically the area where the ISIS bomber and his family had lived, including his father and brother, who are both currently under arrest for terrorism-related charges. The area in northern England was also home to Abedi al-Basset Azals, an al-Qaeda strongman who fought Gaddafi revolutionary forces in Libya starting in 2011. It was in 2011 that the UK began to allow radical Libyans living in Britain, including and especially from Manchester, to gain safe passages to Libya in order to fight Libyan forces. Manchester has been described as a hotbed of anti-Gaddafi Libyan jihadists and terrorist sympathizers. One jihadist with UK citizenship spoke of how he was allowed to travel to engage in jihad against Libya. I was allowed to go, no questions asked. Another jihadist, one Belil Yunus, was approached by an MI5 British intelligence agent and asked if he was willing to go and battle jihad. Yunus agreed, but was soon stopped by security at a UK airport. However, the British deep state made sure to clear that up. Yunus explained that he simply called the MI5 agent who was in contact, and shortly thereafter he was allowed to fly to Libya with no further questions asked. In claim that ought to worry security officials throughout the world, Yunus said. Those Libyan diasporas were out for the fight alongside of rebel groups. By the rebel, of course, he means al-Qaeda affiliates, and by Libyan diaspora, he means many individuals who were wanted criminals in Libya. Many of them wanted on charges of terrorism and treason. Another Libyan and UK citizenship spoke to a Middle East Eye and told the publication how the UK recruited him to produce anti-Gaddafi jihadist propaganda. The source said he was recruited to edit highly polished videos showing the elite British SAS, Special Air Service, training jihadists in Libya. The aim of the videos was to present the final edit to wealthy Gulfists in Qatar and UAE in order to convince them to fund Britain's efforts in training more jihadist fighters. In other words, there's people who run the shop here, whether they get some new equipment. Good for them. Although Britain's involvement in funding anti-Libyan terrorists dates back to at least the 1990s, between 2004 when Tony Blair reached a historic accord with Gaddafi, and 2011 when Britain joined the war against Libya, many Libyan jihadists in places like Manchester were subject to crackdowns on their activity. This all changed around 2011 according to Ziad Hashim. Hashim said, when the revolution started, things changed in Britain. Their way of speaking to me and treating me was different. They offered to give me benefits, even definite leave to remain or citizenship. Interesting, huh? It is important to remember that in 2011, the British Home Secretary, the cabinet-level position responsible for fighting crime and terrorism, was none other than the UK current Prime Minister, Theresa May, who faces a general election on the 8th of June. The level of responsibility that the UK bears for turning once a great British city into a kind of jihadist fortress in the world is monumental. Gaddafi warned of this danger, but Britain at the time did not only listen, they did the opposite. And it is an interesting speech what Muammar Gaddafi said about the infiltrators, because even like I said, I'm not a big fan of government figureheads and so forth, and I know some of his Gaddafi's past practice is controversial, sketchy, and all that. However, he stopped playing ball with the globalists. That's why, in my view, he got taken out. But his speech on February 22nd, 2011, has a lot of merit. It was proven he was against radical Muslims, Islam, in his country, in calling Sharia law. So you could listen to his speech on here about he wants this country to be defended. He believes God will protect them. But now look what's going on in Libya, and people think it's okay. If there's a Republican in there, they'll have a cow. But if it's a Democrat, They didn't say those people didn't say a word, and vice versa. Okay, just to let you know the hypocrisy. How some of these folks they're so gullible they chew this crap up. But just another article stating how the British government funded and coddled these individuals. All right, is it just another shame? And we can call this an inside. You call this an inside job if you want, and I wouldn't blame you one bit. And of course, another thing I'm going to add on here is by Dan Dix from Press for Truth. Did a good job in this video. It says Manchester bombing suspect Salman Abedi, Jihadist extremist or intelligence Patsy. I may see both sides of it, him being a Patsy and all that, and people still buying the mainstream hype. Oh yeah, but he's a Muslim. I'm like, look, but we got British intelligence. They're like coddling these people for so many years, and this happens. It doesn't matter. Stop getting. You look at the bigger picture, my friends. When it comes to government trying to protect you and all that, it's nothing more than a pathetic wet dream. And enough said on this topic. So, next thing I'm going to be doing, I'll be addressing here is by popularmilitary.com, and came out yesterday by Jim Virgio. It says here, report finds U.S. Army lost track of $1 billion in weapons and ammo in the Middle East. Let's see what it says here. An inspector in general memorandum dated September 2016, the IG says the Army did not implement effective control to maintain visibility and accountability of Iraq trained equipped fund equipment, which is ITEF. Amnesty International, who obtained a report via Freedom of Information Act request, reports the IG's audit discovered the Army's sloppy accountability procedures and record-keeping within the Iraqi chain of command resulted in arms manufactured in the U.S. and other countries winding up in the hands of armed groups known to be committing war crimes and other atrocities, such as the Islamic State military group ISIS. This audit provides a worrying insight into the U.S. Army's flawed and potentially dangerous system for controlling millions of dollars worth of arms transferred to a huge volatile region. Patrick Wilkin, Amnesty International's arms control and human rights researcher, said in a statement published by Raw Story. The report contends the Army use of separate, locally generated spreadsheets were vulnerable to human input errors, and that because spreadsheets were not geographically located within the same chain of custody, the Army is unsure regarding the location of large quantities of rolling stock and ammunition intended for transfer to the government of Iraq, GOI as ITEF. The accounted for U.S. taxpayers-funded transfers included tens of thousands of assault rifles worth $28 million, headed of mortar rounds, and hundreds of Humvee armored vehicles destined for use by the Central Iraqi Army. In 2015, Congress approved $1.6 billion to combating the advance of ISIS. In the report's findings, it is noted specifically the first Theater Sustainment Command could not provide orders complete data for the quantity and the dollar value of equipment on hand, including rolling stock and ammunition. This occurred because the first TSE did not use centralized systems to maintain visibility and accountability of ITEF equipment. Instead, the first TSE relied on multiple spreadsheets developed by different commands in both Kuwait and Iraq to provide it with visibility and accountability of equipment, and did not consistently account for equipment in Iraq. You always got to look at that, folks. As a result, the first TSE did not have accurate, up-to-date records on the quantity and location of ITEF equipment on hand in Kuwait and Iraq. In addition, the use of manually populated spreadsheets increased the risk for human error when inputting and updating equipment data. According to Raw Story, Wilkin said that it is vital that weapons and equipment be checked after delivery. Any fragilities along the transfer chain, he said, greatly increased the risk of weapons going astray in a region where armed groups have wrought havoc and caused immense human suffering. The report says the deputy commander of 1st ITC agreed with IG's findings and immediately initiated steps to implement corrective actions. Well. So like one person said, the weapons are in the hands of terrorists at the U.S. and Julian support ISIS. Well, I gotta say this, my friends. There's always these interconnections on what's happening. And like I tell people before, ISIS is just New World Order funded. And what's interesting too, when it comes to record keeping, very flawed and sloppy. How come there's no? I'm just wondering if there's going to be a big investigation on that. Well, remember, they're all worried about the Russian ties. They don't really care about this. Of course, don't worry. We'll get more money from the taxpayers. We'll get a bigger budget. We need to save the world and protect you while ripping you bastards off. That's to the American people, to be exact. As far as I'm concerned, I see a lot of misappropriation of funds. See, even in labor organizations like myself, I'm in it, you have to make sure all your records are accurate and well organized. I've seen sloppiness in other records in the past from other places when I read their bylaws and so forth. So, how long is this going to stop? How long are we going to put this to a halt? That is the question. You put more money out there. The fiasco's not going to work. And if this budget collapse, don't blame it on Donald Trump. Okay, just to let you know. Beware of witch hunting. You gotta call out the U.S. Army and the people of Congress. How come they're not doing any more thorough oversight? All right. Well, next one here came from Vocative, and came out with it yesterday. Yeah, it came out yesterday. It says here, Vermont DMV caught using illegal facial recognition program. Ooh. Local, state, and federal law enforcement were allowed to search DMV photo databases, documents show. And as it reads here, the Vermont Department of Motor Vehicles has been caught using facial recognition software despite a state law preventing it. Documents obtained by the American Civil Liberties Union of Vermont describe such a program, which uses the software to compare the DMV's database of names and driver's license photos with information with state and federal law enforcement. Vermont state law, however, specifically states that the Department of Motor Vehicles shall not implement any procedures or processes that involve the use of biometric identifiers. Ooh, so someone's going to get screwed here. The program, the ACU says, invites state and federal agencies to submit photographs of persons of interest to the Vermont DMV, which it compares against its database of some 2.6 million photos and shows potential matches. Since 2011, the agency has run at least 126 searches on behalf of local police, the State Department, FBI, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Vermont DMV has no press, media, or public relations contact listed on its website, and an email to Commissioner Robert Ide's office wasn't returned, but Adil told local Alt Weekly 7 days that residents should have absolute confidence in how we are accepting and carrying through our responsibility. He added that he was unaware of the law banning the use of biometrics. So why the hell you're in there, right? Knucklehead. Probably don't really buy it. Vermonters are hardly alone in being unwitting entrants in the facial recognition database due to law enforcement information sharing practices. Half of all U.S. citizens photographed, whether from driver's license, state ID, or passport, are in some sort of police database, according to a 2016 Georgetown University study. Broadly speaking, people of color are disproportionately impacted by biometric law enforcement tools, and in Vermont there is no exception. Compared to the state's driving population, African American Vermonters were 7 times as likely to be searched for through this program, and Hispanics 12 times as likely as their white counterparts. In addition, the violating Vermont law, DMV's facial recognition program invades Vermonters' privacy that disproportionately targets people of color, places immigrants as increased risk of harm, and lack due process protections to prevent further abuse. James Leal, the executive director of the ACLU of Vermont, said in a statement, the program was banned for a reason and must be halted immediately. And I have to agree, like the ACLU or not, more of invasion of privacy in their Vermont Constitution. But you got folks out there don't know what they're doing. They want to be kind of, sort of. Remember, assumption means no, my friends. And you know what? It's time to eviscerate that program from the Green Mountain State and beyond. So I gotta give the thumbs up to the folks from the ACLU of Vermont for pointing this out, and that's why everyone who lives in Vermont and other states within the Union, we have obligations to study our state constitution. Okay? You don't have to have a lawyer. You can read it yourself, man. It's self-explanatory. Now you can even use legal Black Laws Dictionary, so legaldictionary.org as well. I present this a few times, but folks look into it. You won't be disappointed, and you will have more knowledge, lest you fear them. Okay? All right. This one here, a friend of mine posted on Facebook. Kevin Warhaft. It'll be his birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, my brother of metal. Knew him for almost 29 years. And this is about an article of Crazy Larry Hawke of Hateplow. He's doing raw drum tracks. A little bit entertainment from Sick Drummer magazine. It's 20 years gone, a tribute to Crazy Larry Hawke of Hateplow, raw drum tracks. Today marks 20 years since his ultimately passing of Crazy Larry Hawke, a death metal drummer, best known for his work in South Florida death metal band Hateplow. Even though other bands like Malevolent Creation, etc., and Encephalitis. Larry passed away from smoke inhalation during the house fire when he went back into the home to attempt to save the family pet poodle Kelly. Kyle Simons, the singer of Hateplow, wanted to do something special to remember Larry on this day, so he sent some never before heard raw tracks of Larry in the studio during the tracking of Hateplow's 1998 full-length Everybody Dies. When we asked Kyle about Larry and some other drummers who have since played Hateplow, here's what he had to say. I know that Dave Chloris and Derek Roddy were always around with Larry at the warehouse. Larry would always talk about them, good things, of course. And when I drop him off at home after practice, I can't remember if Dave Lorano was around or if that was after his passing. I think Tony was still in Orlando doing Nephobia at the time. These tracks are raw drums, no triggers, no editing, no nothing, just the straight mics played along with scratched guitar tracks. So thank you, Kyle, and rest easy, drumming brother Larry. So she was born on January 15, 1972 and passed May 24, 1997. You're not gone, but never forgotten and sorely missed by those who knew you best. And they have like 16 tracks here. And he was an insane drummer, I can say that. This time I want to smack the crap out of him, and I say that out of love. For being with some of his knucklehead ways. Yeah, we all have our falters, so that's why I gotta laugh about it. However, there's an article in here about the passing, and we had a service photo of him with Phil Fasciana and many others. Of course, Larry Hawke being Larry. So yeah, he'll always be remembered. There's like I said, there were days that's like to pick him up and hang him by his ankles. But he was a good guy. That's one thing I gotta say. He may be insane, but he was a good-hearted person. And I'm glad this came out because, like I said, my friends, we only live once. Let's value it. And that's why a lot of people I chat with, I still think about them. I love them. And gotta always cherish those that deserve it. Had some couple of Union brothers pass away. Of course, brother Pierre Roseman and brother Richard Venegas. Pierre Roseman was 72, died during surgery, and Richard Venegas, he had pancreatic cancer, if I'm correct. He was only 53. So I still call them brothers. Like I said, there's days like to hang them by their ankles and smack them beside their head, but never out of vindication. So even with Larry Hawke and everyone out there that's not around. So always share a little love now and then. If you have animosity and show pure hatred, you can get gray real quick, and you'll be winding up hating yourselves. May so be forever free, my brother, and the other two as well, and many others that probably passed or what passed. So, okay, my friends, that is it. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to this episode. Plus, feel free to download and share it throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's interesting I may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondence with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, Minds.com, Theme.life, FutureNet.club, and Patreon.com. If you want to donate money and all that, you can put your questions in there, /Local Third, 3 eyes, all together. I always can stop there. I don't know why I get that habit. I'm going to write this down. Sometimes I got too many things on my mind. Scattered brain moments, but that's okay. In addition, you could email me at LokiLuck3, which is LokiLuck3 @gmail.com, or you encrypted fans or supporters, LokiLuck03 @protonmail.com. All right, my friends. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.